Hi, this is Mr. Payton. Welcome to Standing on Their Shoulders. I want to talk about the history of slavery, not from a perspective that most share. Obviously, the number of people that were transported from Africa, the treatment of those people, whether it was on water or on land once they were in plantations, all of that I think has been covered. And that's not to say that I don't want to cover it, but I want to talk to you about it from a different perspective. In this series of episodes called Standing on Your Shoulders, I'm just seeking to give you the experience of one black man in the United States and my perspective on how black history and issues that are particular to black people and how it impacts me. When I think about slavery, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, how many ways it's framed or presented. It's just the most unbelievable thing I can think of. And anything related to that or close to that, it just makes me sad, angry. It gives me a number of different emotions. But where I want to take this conversation may not be the most popular, but I think it is very appropriate. Over the last probably I'd say 5 or 6 years, I've come to understand that for some people, not all, talking about slavery or thinking about slavery is probably most like people who have PTSD and them talking about their war experience. And I only know that because over the last couple of years, I've had several conversations with people who struggle with PTSD. And they talk about their triggers and they talk about their experience and they talk about how it just precludes them from living a regular life. Now, the major difference in my opinion is that, most African Americans who are alive today have not experienced slavery. So I understand that that's a major difference between the two. However, the idea that we can make movies or satire or memes as they're called today, the idea that those images, sounds, or details can be brought up and it has no impact on African Americans, no impact at all on black people, that's far-fetched. And that's where I see the similarities. I'll give you an example. There are several movies that I just won't watch, because it'll put me in a state of mind that won't render me useless, but it will take me a while to kind of come back. I'm not a big fan of any movie that's like just that post-slavery era where they're showing people who just came out of being sharecroppers and they're struggling to try to make a life. I get that for some people, that is entertaining. Not to say funny or anything like that, but entertaining from the standpoint of they like that type of art. That's just not me. I'm not a huge fan of watching movies that specifically depict slavery or anything that's related. And it doesn't have to be African American slavery. Just anybody that's being enslaved. It does something to me. I notice my temperature rises and I start to question, like, why would any human being subject another human being to that behavior? I think for some individuals who maybe aren't stable for a number of reasons, it can be even worse. Fortunately for me, I'm an educated person. I have a strong spiritual background. I pray. I'm a praying man. And so for me, when I have those issues, I have a source to go to deal with that. But what about the average person that doesn't have that type of foundation, that doesn't have that level of strength, that doesn't have that wherewithal? To me, again, I liken that to our veterans who are over here without support. They went and sacrificed and gave for the protection of our country. And now they're sitting here basically, just trying to figure it out. And again, I've met people in varying levels and struggling in different ways for different reasons. But it's interesting how much we seem to have in common. It's interesting the kinds of things we both tend to avoid. And it's interesting the kinds of things that we tend to do to try to overcome those feelings. And so I just thought that was a different take or a different way to look at the experience of the enslaved black man or African American person in the United States. Not to sit here and talk about whips and plantations and cotton, but to talk about the greater impact it's had on a group of people over time. Because that's the other thing that I think is similar about PTSD. If you got a grandpa that struggles with PTSD, or an uncle or a dad or a mom or an aunt, some of that trauma can be passed on. And at what point do we start to acknowledge that some of the things that plague us in terms of mental health have been passed on, not necessarily from a chemical standpoint or biological standpoint, but because of certain behaviors and because of the way those people have to live to make it, they pass those things on to their children unknowingly, whether it's a level of anxiety, a lack of trust, and trust is not just about relationships, whether they be romantic or platonic. Trust has to do with, I don't trust the system. The system used up my grandpa and now there's nothing left of him. So I think these things are far reaching. And I just thought that it was important to make a connection between the enslavement of the African American in the United States and the struggles of the veteran who seemed to similarly be overlooked, minimized, marginalized to a large extent. And for many people, not a lot, but for many, and to me, 5% is too many. For many people, there is just a sense of, oh, they'll be all right. Like, what's the big deal? I just think that we are past the point where we minimize or marginalize anyone who has a deficiency or struggles in a particular area. And I just thought, again, it was important to make a connection between PTSD for our veterans and a possible link between PTSD and just the idea and the generational struggles that come from an enslaved people. I hope that this, it should make you a little uncomfortable so that you talk about it and so that you can have the conversations that need to be had. I hope that you liked this video, meaning that you had a respect or an interest in it. Hope you subscribe to my channel. And I thank you for watching and paying attention. Have a great day.